Hi everyone, this is Anne from Geeks of Green, and today at the plant table I have the gorgeous cane begonias. I have been getting so many requests for this video, so I hope today we can cover all the care aspects of cane begonias. Before we get into the video, a quick reminder to participate in the monthly giveaways that we do on YouTube. The winner for the giveaway of the month of August that was sponsored by Milestone Studio is
Sumaya Kazi.
Congratulations! Do drop in a mail at geeksofgreen.gmail.com so that we can get in touch with you. The giveaway for the month of September has been sponsored by The Twisted Joy. Do check out their Instagram page. All the links will be in the description down below. One of the reasons I am doing these giveaways is to bring to your notice small businesses. I really hope that you will support them and you will participate. Begonias are perennial flowering plants. The genus Begonia contains about 2000 plant species and innumerable hybrids. They grow well in tropical or subtropical climates and are native to such places like many countries in South America. Some quick facts. Begonias are monoecious, which means they have both male and female flowers occurring on the same plant. There are tuberous begonias, rhizomatous begonias, and fibrous-rooted begonias. Many begonias grow and flower all year round. The tuberous ones have a dormancy resting period, and the rhizomatous ones can die down to the last leaf and come back if the rhizomes are still alive. Talking about the different types of begonias in the begonia genus, let me name a few. We have the begonia semperflorens, which are fibrous-rooted and are commonly called the wax begonia. We also have the Rex begonia, which are rhizomatous. Then we have the trailing scandent begonia, for example, the pigskin begonia, which is a rhizomatous one, which has a trailing habit and fits really well in hanging baskets. This one that I have, I also presume is a trailing scandent because of how it grows. Then there is a tuberous begonia, which I have never grown. But they have these tiny rose-like flowers that come in so many different colors and they're really beautiful. There are also shrub-like begonias which have many shoots coming out of the soil to make a plant, like this begonia venosa that I have here. There is yet another type called the thick stem begonias, but they have thick and woody stems and are different from canes. Then finally, we have the cane begonias, which is what we will be talking about today. These have distinct cane-like upright stems, hence the name, and they have fibrous roots as well. In my opinion, you can also apply the same care to the trailing scandent begonias as I do. Also, in this video, I won't be able to show you all the begonias that I own. I have brought some out and I will be showing you them. But if you want a dedicated video where I talk about my begonias and show you all of them, like a mini haul or like a show and tell, do let me know in the comments down below and I will definitely plan that for you all. Now let's dive into the plant care. So first we'll talk about sunlight. These plants need bright and direct light. I have been growing canes for some time now and I have experimented with all the different exposures in my balcony. So there is a spot where I get direct morning sunlight for a couple of hours based on the season. The light gets a little more intense in the summers, but it is mild as compared to afternoon sun. I tried keeping a cane there, but it got scorched in the summer, though all it got was 2 hours of direct morning sunlight. Now these plants have delicate thin leaves that are sunburned easily. So avoid giving it direct light and be very careful if you have a harsh southwestern exposure. What you can do in that case is keep the plant away from the window or put up some sheer curtains to cut out the intensity of the light. Or what you can do is keep some sun-loving plants before it nearer to the window so that it cuts out the light and the begonias get dappled broken sunlight. So this way you can protect your plants from very harsh light. However, there are some species and hybrids that will tolerate full sun as well. So experiment and find out what your plant needs exactly. I've also kept some growing under LED tube lights as well, and they are growing well. Some canes are simply in bright indirect light through the day and they are fine. So to summarize, they will appreciate dapple light, shady spots, and remember, shade does not mean darkness. They will like bright and direct light also. They will not do well in dark spots with less light. So please give them bright and direct light. Humidity. You would notice that canes are seen growing well with people who are based in coastal cities like Mumbai, Goa, where the humidity is generally high. I'm not saying that they cannot grow in drier cities, but you might have to take a little extra effort, especially in the dry seasons. Remember, they will appreciate humidity above 60% and will tolerate humidity going down to 40% as well. Try to keep them happy and thriving by keeping the humidity up. Watch my video on how to boost the humidity for your plants. If you want some tips and tricks, I will leave the link of this video in the description down below. Let us talk about potting mix before we move on to watering. I've had my canes sitting in clay soil as I brought them from the nursery for as long as I can remember. My Morris Amhi right here is sitting in her nursery pot and I have not repotted her since I got her. And it was maybe 2 years back. I don't remember the exact time, but she's been with me for a long time. She's been doing fine and I have not seen any issues with this plant growing in clay soil. I have also rooted multiple cuttings and she has been growing steadily. The only thing I do occasionally is top off the soil, put some extra fresh soil on the top as it drains down. The ideal soil mix for begonias would have to be a fine yet airy mix that would have peat, vermicompost, perlite, charcoal bits. If you want, you can also add some small size pine bark or pumice. But pine bark and pumice being so expensive can be easily substituted. You can put cocoa chips or perlite instead. Ensure that you mix in portions to keep the mix moisture retaining as well. Another thing you need to keep in mind is that cane begonias have fine roots and these plants grow to be pretty tall. So using a very loose mix may not work for this plant. So to rephrase, a moisture retaining, nutrient rich and well draining mix is best for this plant. Repotting. When I do repot a cane, I am extremely careful as I have lost a couple of them to transplanting shock. It is better not to upset the root ball and be very careful when you're repotting. However, I would also like to add that some canes are more delicate compared to the others. Only with keeping them for some time will you know how they react to specific care. So don't be scared to experiment as these are not very costly plants and are easily found in nurseries. Remember, they do prefer small pots. It is unnecessary to put them in bigger pots. Only repot when the plant shows signs of distress like they stop growing or the roots are overgrown or something like that. Also, I'm very careful not to repot or cut the plant in dry seasons or when the conditions are not perfect for it. I have observed that when I have cut it in the dry seasons, if I've pruned it in the dry seasons or I've tried to repot during that time, when the temperatures are high or too low, that is when the plant doesn't survive. Sometimes the mother plant also dies. So be very careful. Do it in the rainy season when the conditions are absolutely perfect. That is when you prune your plants. We will talk about pruning and propagating in detail a little bit later. Now let's finally talk about watering. These are thirsty plants, so do not starve them for water. You will have to make your watering schedule based on factors like season, drafts, sunlight, soil mix, and many other factors. The best way to determine when to water is to observe the plant and make a schedule based on that. The leaves of some canes look discolored, especially this Don Miller. It becomes extremely discolored when it has not been watered for some time. So, when I see the leaves looking slightly translucent, I go and water the plant. That's like the plant giving me a signal saying that, okay, you've forgotten to water me. So, some of these plants do that. Other plants droop, like my Morris Amy completely droops if I forget to water her. If your soil mix is loose, you can poke a finger in to see if it is dry 2 inches down. If yes, water again. If your plant is in clay soil and the top surface is hard and dry, then you water your plant again. So I personally water them every 2 to 3 days, but don't follow my schedule blindly. Please make your own watering schedule based on the factors surrounding your plants. Misting. I personally mist all my plants in the dry months, but I do it early in the day and ensure the leaves dry up before evening. Remember, cane begonias are prone to bacterial infections, so wet leaves are not good for them. They are known to be susceptible to powdery mildew as well, which we will talk about at the end of the video when we discuss the problems of this plant. Another thing I would like to remind you is that misting doesn't really increase the humidity around the plants. It's just to freshen them a bit. And if you're doing it with a hose or if you're doing it in large quantities, then it may make a difference for some time. So if you're doing it multiple times in the day, then maybe it's good for your plant. So it's up to you to take the misting approach or not. Fertilizing. I don't stress about fertilizing these plants as I keep them for the foliage and not for their flowers. If they do flower, I'm thrilled, of course. But I don't do anything extra to get them to flower. I give them seaweed solution diluted in water maybe once a month. You can give them seaweed once every 15 days also. I also top the soil with vermicompost or cow manure once every 6 months or so. That is, if I remember to. I'm a person who under fertilizes, so you can give them manure every 2 months as well. I don't experiment too much on these plants with fertilizers. I always go with mild fertilizers or organic fertilizers, and they are doing fine. Now let's talk about toxicity. Cane begonias, like the rest of the begonias, are toxic to pets and humans. So simply ensure you keep your babies and pets away from them. They are not to be eaten. Grooming. I don't usually wipe the leaves clean as some canes have textured leaves. They have delicate silvery leaves. I simply hose the plant with mild pressure water as the plants are delicate. I'm very careful while watering them, or I water over the leaves with a rosette watering can. This generally keeps the leaves clean. Every now and then I do pluck out dry leaves to keep the plants looking stunning, and all the dried out canes I cut them back to the base so that they are not sitting ducks for fungal infections. I water over my plants, over the leaves, because I have many plants and being very careful while watering is really difficult for me. So I use a hose and I water my plants that way. But remember this, begonias are prone to bacterial infections uh, because of wet leaves. So if you are facing issues with them getting bacterial infections, if there's not enough airflow or enough circulation around the plants, then do not use this method of watering. We will talk about the problems later towards the end of the video. Pruning and propagation. I prune my begonias only at the start of the rainy season as the conditions are perfect for it at that time, and it helps the plant cope with any kind of stress that it would undergo when I'm pruning it. If you want to keep your canes looking bushy and full and beautiful, pruning is the key. They do grow leggy if you leave them unpruned, so it's important to prune them. Now, you must note that if you are cutting a plant, don't take too many cuttings at one time, as a plant can get really stressed and may not survive. That is, the mother plant may not survive. Some delicate canes might not like being cut too much, so keep that in mind. For an established plant, I would take 3 to 4 cuttings at one time, and for a smaller one, I would take 1 to 2 cuttings at the most. In the past, I have been a little over enthusiastic and taken more cuttings than I needed to, and the plant has shown stress. The mother plant has shown stress. Some plants have not survived. In case of my looking glass, it really got stressed after I took cuttings from it, and it didn't grow. It's been taking a long time to grow back to its beautiful self like it was in the past. So it's alive, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it comes out of this stress that I've caused it. However, in case of my Morris Amy, I have been able to take out more cuttings from it and it has not shown any stress. It does send out more shoots and more canes, and it's been growing happily when I have pruned it. I have a video on Instagram also on IGTV that you can check out of how I prune my Morris Amy. These plants can be propagated from leaves and stem cuttings. I have tried the leaf propagation, it has not worked for me, What you do when you take a leaf cutting is you keep in mind this main vein, and then you cut a rectangular piece out of this part and keep it in a humidity box. And what happens then is the plant roots. People even keep the entire leaf in a humidity box and keep it under good bright light, and the plant roots, it sends out new leaves. This apparently works very well with Rex begonias and canes too, but I'm not sure because I have never had success with it. I will give it a try again. I tried it a couple of times long back. Maybe the conditions were not right and maybe I didn't do it correctly, but I'm going to definitely give it a shot, and I'll put updates on Instagram. So don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you're not following me. There are a lot of plant updates that we put over there as well. So all in all, I prefer the good old method of water propagation. I would say is the easiest way for canes to root. To know how to water propagate, check my videos on these topics. I will leave the links in the description down below. If you want to soil propagate, that is fine as well. But you may not succeed always because keeping the humidity up and the soil rightly moist could be a challenge, especially if you have a busy schedule. If you are committed to taking care of the soil propagation, then go ahead. It's a great way to propagate canes. Just remember one thing when you are doing soil propagation is use a moisture retaining soil that has a lot of peaty mix and it retains moisture, doesn't dry out easily, but well draining also. You can even mix in a little bit of perlite and coco peat and root your canes directly in that as well. You could also try semi-hydroponics using leca or granulates to root the cuttings. I have personally had success with this. Temperature. These plants do not like sudden rises and drops in temperature. It prefers temperatures between 15 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius. So in the summers when it gets very hot in some places in our country, or there are some places where there are very harsh winters, you might have to take steps to keep the plant cool. Maybe move them to a cooler room or something like that. What works for me is I pour a little water on the balcony floor and keep the fan on for a bit in the afternoon when the heat is really very intense. This I do on watering days, not every day, but it works for my plants. It cools down the balcony and it increases the humidity, and my plants survived through this last summer because of this. Now let's talk about growth. These are pretty fast growers under really good conditions, and some of them can grow up to 5 feet. I've also heard people say they grow up to 12 feet. I'm not sure about that, but come spring and rain, you will see that these plants grow really well, and they can grow really big and tall. This one at the back is growing super tall. You can see it's growing tall, but it's getting a little leggy. But one thing you need to remember about growth is the plant needs to get everything that it wants, and if it gets really good quality bright light and watering on time and being fertilized on time and a good amount of humidity, the leaves will grow bigger and the plant will grow taller. Another thing I thought I would mention with this point is that if your plant has grown tall and you do not want to prune it, you might have to put stakes to support the branches. The branches can sway about, can droop down because they grow really tall. And if you want to grow your begonia tall, just see that you put out stakes and keep them straight. I have to do that for a couple of my plants and I will be getting on it after the video. Now let's talk about the problems. If your plant is not getting what it needs and is struggling, that is when the plant becomes susceptible to pests. When they are weak, pests, they cannot fight off pests. If you ask me my personal opinion of begonia pests, I've had none affecting them till now. So there have been plants with mealybugs and mites. They have never moved on to my cane begonias. They have been a problem-free plant for me generally. However, there are gardeners all over who have faced issues with this plant, and many of them have contacted me on Instagram. I will quickly cover a few issues that I've heard of more commonly. The first one is powdery mildew. The most common issue that I have been asked about by you guys is about powdery mildew. When this affects the plant, it leaves a powdery white fungus on the leaves. One important thing to do is keep a keen eye on your plants in the first place, so that when you spot an infestation or a problem, you can tackle it head on. So keep going into your garden, looking at your plants, checking them, and you will find problems very quickly. For powdery mildew, you could remove all the affected parts and spray a fungicide on your plant. Repeat it till the plant recovers. There are other bacterial and fungal infections that you might want to keep an eye out for, like the Xanthomonas campestris, which is bacterial leaf spot. This usually happens in high temperatures. If you see some blisters on the undersides of the leaves, then prune them off. Botrytis blight, which is stem rot, also happens again in wet environments. If you catch this early on, repot the plant into fresh soil. If there are healthy unaffected parts, take cuttings and propagate them immediately. Usually there is not much to do for a plant once there is a bacterial infection, but taking cuttings is a safe way to keep your plant going. There are a few other bacteria and even foliar nematodes that affect these plants, but all in all, keep your plants healthy and give them what they need, and they will fight off these infestations much better. You could take preventive measures like spraying a systemic fungicide during the rainy season or during the wet seasons. Ensure that the plant gets time to dry up after watering, and finish watering them in the morning so they have the whole day to dry up. Or if you are watering later in the day, avoid the leaves getting wet. The reason I say this is because in the evening, when the leaves are wet, they act as a haven for all sorts of bacteria and they are more prone to infections. One more thing you could do is ensure that the plants are not kept cramped up together and they have enough air circulating around them. Not too much as to kill the humidity, but just enough to find a balance and keep the humidity up, but also keep good air circulation around the plant. I really hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, do give us a thumbs up please. And please do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon for notification of new videos. Do follow us on Instagram for closer interactions as well. I do hope to see you again next week. Till then, stay green.